and welcome, I'm Ashysaurus, aka Ashy, and today I am talking about the latest articles from Game Informer in a video that they just uploaded. We're going to be talking about companion design philosophy and BioWare on returning to the Dragon Age series 10 years after Inquisition in their newest video. If this is the type of content you would like to see, news, Dragon Age, or BioWare, then you are in the right place. So like and subscribe to see more. So let's jump into it. The first article. From this article, we learned that Veilguard is the first game in the studio that is purposely and intentionally created great companions, and that the companions are key to everything that's going on in Veilguard. It was also mentioned by the general manager that they wanted to make this game the centerpiece of their companions being their centerpiece, and that they wanted to get knee deep into it, and that this is their motivations, showing their motivations and stories arc and stuff like that. That's what this is going to be about. We mentioned a little bit about that, how that when they changed the name from Dragon Age Dreadwolf to Veilguard, that's why. So that's just another little thing that they were mentioning. They were also talking about how, from the game director, that this was the most realized complex companions they've ever made. The game director mentioned that these companions are fully realized and complex companions that they've ever crafted, and believes that these are the Dragon Age series best. They continue on in how they say that they have they're complicated, they have complicated issues, and that's what's interesting, and how they adored the original journeys that they had with the other titles, but they always felt like they were going on an adventure with the main character, and instead in Veilguard, this is going to feel like that they're fleshed out, and that they're on a journey with them, and exploring how they feel, and how they think, and helping them through their problems, and working through their unique character arcs, and that they're like dear friends, and how they adore them. The article continues. The game director talks about how these companions are participating in the darker feel of the game and the most optimistic parts of the games. There are places where it's all colorful and highs of highs, and then they could be optimistic, but also the lowest of lows and the gritty and the most painful and dark parts. But through it all, there's a sense of optimism through even the dark and the optimism that makes it delightful in a through line throughout the game. The journalist Wesley LeBlanc asked the creative director about BioWare's philosophy behind Veilguard and its companions, and he reveals a phrase that the studio uses: Dragon Age is about characters, not causes. And they were mentioning how you could take the Grey Wardens, for example, and the Grey Wardens are an interesting faction by themselves, but they don't tell a story. It's the characters within that faction that tells a story, you know? So that's what they were mentioning to LeBlanc. They also was mentioning how these factions represent different faces of Thetis, and how the storytelling that they wanted to do, which again shows Thetis at a large and diverse living world, and when you're not there, this is what's going on. They also mention about the principles of making Veilguard, and that the world exists even without Rook. And when Rook is not around, there are things that's going on, conflicts, grudges, and more, and what's happening even when Rook isn't participating in them. They also mention that they have stories of their own, and how Rook comes into those stories in interesting ways, how to develop those stories now with Rook being in them. The art director also mentions how designing these characters is not just about designing a character. They're the face of their faction, and in some cases, like Bellara, they're an entire area of the world. And mentions also that he wanted to try to at least make something of a challenge for cosplayers, which I doubt, because today's Friday when I'm recording this, and I just seen someone make a cosplay of Scott Harding's new outfit and hair, and I'm just like, yeah, that's not gonna happen. Like, there's already people making Eve cosplays, and I'm just like, yeah, that's not gonna end up working well. There's no challenge when it comes to cosplayers. A lot of cosplayers can make a mech armor in like 30 days, and you're just like, what the? How did you do that? They talk about Neve, and they give her like a brief description. Her brief description is that she's a part of the rebel faction within Thetis, which is the Shadow Dragon, and how they're against magocracy, basically against the Tevinter like magisters, and they fight against like oppressive and very damaging regime, and taking over the city because he believes there's good, and she's there for the common people. They also mention how in Tevinter, if you're not a mage, you're treated lower than dirt, and that she and the Shadow Dragons in general fight back, and that Neve in particular is a character that represents more of the voice of the streets and of the common people. And they also mention how in Dragon Age Inquisition you get characters like Celine, and how they were higher class and they're like top of the food chain, while she's supposed to be a character that's just an average person living in Tevinter, instead of looking at the people who are at the top of Tevinter, which I would also add in is Dorian was technically one of the top of the food chain because he was a Magister's son. So I'm pretty sure they're trying to make it that she's not like Dorian. She's like her own average person kind of thing. Neve is very much about being again against fighting oppression, tyranny, and being a private investigator and finding clues through problems that aren't action focused like some other companions. So she's more of a talker than a fighter, I guess, sometimes, because obviously that's not how you get her. The article mentions how battling with your companions, that as the plot continues, they can learn how to use their abilities better as if they're like real people. So it just feels like you're with real people that they learn as you go through the story, which is interesting. They also mention how some strategy works, how you can slow down time with Bellara and use Harding to kick down an enemy and then allow Rook to swoop in and take advantage of the situation. They also mention that there are combos that your companions can play off of each other, just like that. They also talk about queuing up abilities between each other, and those abilities can go off from companion to companion, and that their effects can result in a massive detonation where it enhances effects and debuffs the entire battlefield because of planning teamwork. They also talk about how it is mentioned that upgrading some of Harding's abilities, and that she can automatically use abilities that you normally have to instruct her to do, like they were talking about with her kick, and that she'll be able to set up a execution for Rook so they can do that same detonation effect that was mentioned before. Outside of combat, they talk about how they have rooms in the lighthouse that will reflect them over time. They also seem like they wanted to do something like this in Inquisition, personally to me, but I think it's really cool if it's more advanced and it actually changes, because I feel like they did something like that for Solus where his murals changed, I'm pretty sure, but I'm not exactly sure that they changed only in Trespasser or not, but that's really cool. The more time you spend with them, and as the game develops, as you work through their arcs, their rooms, and their personalities will evolve and flourish and become more complete as they trust you more and understand them better. The game director also says that two companions who fell in love with each other during their playthrough and during a quest, they had to make some hard choices and it led them to heartbreak. And they were saying that some of this stuff breaks their heart. Really. It was also noted that that was a specific playthrough and not a definitive circumstance that happens every single time you play the game. So it may have been just for this Rook's playthrough and then their other Rook's playthrough was different. And they also mention that you're adventuring with them, and as you're returning to the lighthouse and getting to know them and all these decisions and conversations and things that you learn with them, it endears them to you in a way that I honestly haven't experienced before, and sometimes it fills me with joy and sometimes it breaks my heart. That was the quote at the ending of the article. Now we're moving on to the next article. This article starts off with them talking about it's been 10 years since the last game release and that Veilguard has a lot riding on them. And that since it's a follow-up to a beloved game from a decade ago in BioWare's beloved series, most beloved series, it says, it's also BioWare's first game since 2019's Anthem, the live service game that they just recently got rid of after 2 years. The journalist LeBlanc asked if they learned any lessons following up the Inquisition and how it's been returning to the series after so many years. The general manager mentioned that they spent a lot of time experimenting things and innovating different things, and mentions how they one point were a multiplayer game, which I mentioned before, and that they were trying to return back to their roots and they couldn't do that with multiplayer. And they said that they wanted to go back to their roots, which was storytelling, making unforgettable characters, and having an opportunity to influence the world. They also mentioned that multiplayer couldn't do what they wanted, and that single player is really what they wanted to spend their time with, and spending time in pre-production working on what their vision was and is, and the budget that they can deliver the creative promise of Veilguard. They also mentioned how they have seasoned veterans and new voices and perspectives, and that was really important of this game. I'm really bad at pronouncing names, so usually I only say like Mark Dar or something like that because that's just the name I know because I follow him. But for the other ones, they just have, I'm just gonna say their last name, which was Dara, Epler, and then I think Bush. I'm probably butchering the creative director's name, but it's Bush. I think Bushe. Some people say it's differently, but they were talking about how all of them have been on Dragon Age for a while or at BioWare for a while, and how Daros has been there since Baldur's Gate days, and how Epler has been there for a long time, and I think he said he was going to be here for like 17 years soon, and then Bush has been here since 2019 after Anthem and has loved the series, the Dragon Age series, since 2009. They talk about more about creativity and having the people to do so, and how Mark Dar has been attached to BioWare since the Baldur's Gate days. And when they asked about the progression of the Dragon Age series, he says that it's been amazing and how the tech has gotten so much better, and that, and I will read a quote just to give you a better way of saying that is that the thing is that it's so amazing about Veilguard that this is the game where we finally said out loud that BioWare's greatest strength is telling stories through their characters. If you go all the way back to Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, these games are telling stories through their characters, but there wasn't any intentionality behind that. And that this game is finally putting the intentionality first and foremost, putting characters first, building the game around it and around those characters' moments, which is really the best way that BioWare knows how to tell stories. When asked if anything Veilguard is doing that BioWare said wanted to do in previous games but couldn't, he says that storytelling through animation and how in previous games which characters move in the exact same way. Everyone was homogeneous. I think that's how you pronounce that word. If you put on a suit of armor and put it on Alistair, you looked exactly the same standing right by each other, which he's not wrong. Now being able to keep the characters coming through in visual and motion, even as you're customizing them, which wasn't possible in the past. He also mentions how Inquisition did a good job for using the Frostbite engine, respectfully he said, but Veilguard has a better understanding of the engine and the tech has gotten better since then, and some of the things that they wanted to do wasn't possible in the past. So now they're able to do it now. They also continue and talk about how it's been 10 years between Dragon Age Inquisition and Veilguard, and that Veilguard is respectfully and referential to the previous games, without feeling like you have to play all of the other games fully to understand what's going on. And they also mention how there's going to be callbacks, but this is really its own story and a continuation with a different cast and with different characters, and says that Dragon Age has always been like that, where they have different casts per game, and so this is giving a lot of freedom in terms of what they can lean on from the past and what they can really bring you in forward facing for Veilguard. Dara adds on that Veilguard's events play out with a storytelling goal for the future of the series. That this is a game which takes the ball that Inquisition had and put its own spin on it. It has its own characters, its own direction, and it continues on a path to the future, which means I'm guessing they're gonna see if they can make another Dragon Age game, but we'll see. They mention how Dragon Age has always been about change, and every game has a new protagonist and exploring its own space, and Veilguard isn't much different, and says that Veilguard does a good job bridging the gap, and that how super fans actually have made pretty good guesses, and that I'm one of those people who hope that I was right. And some of them are pretty much right about the franchise and where it's going, and that they want to make sure that people that have only played Inquisition are understanding what the franchise is really about, and it's about a new protagonist, and it's about change, evolution, and don't come in expecting a direct sequel to a game that they played and then disappointed. This game is supposed to be something new that evolves, something that is greater than what came before, and the same as each game before it. They mention balancing for newcomers and for expectations in Veilguard is about managing assumptions. They also hinted that we'll be going to the Fortress of Weishaupt. I always say Weishaupt because of one of the companions. I do not remember who said it, but they said it that way. The depths of the Arlathan Forest, Ravani Coast, the Grand Necropolis. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. The Grand Necropolis of Navarra. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. And Minrathous. And now players can finally play through those stories in those locations. And they also mention how it's the rich history of world building in the IP. So that existing players will be familiar with these places and very excited to go to them and explore their mysteries. But for their new players, they're not assuming that they know everything about it, but they would say that they extended these characters and taken great care how to introduce them well in every companion and major figure within the game, with that in mind. The creative director says that Veilguard differs from Dragon Age Inquisition and the other Dragon Age games in that Rook, the player character, can't save the world without the other characters, and that they were mentioning that in Dragon Age it has always been about characters, but to some degree it's almost felt like they lucked into that. Inquisition is a story that ultimately you, the main character, have the biggest part to play, and we wanted to tell a story this time where you literally cannot save the world without these characters, and beyond that, though we also wanted to give them their own arcs that can run parallel to the main story and really give them that kind of deep storytelling our fans really enjoy. He also mentions that Veilguard is his favorite Dragon Age game that he's worked on. It's noted that he worked on all of them, and starting as a quality assurance tester on Origins, and he says the reason for this is the storytelling in the characters, companions, and the relationships. And also mentions in a quote, they have their friendships, they have their rivalries, and they lean into that concept. He also mentions, you're not just pulling together a bunch of people who will do whatever you say, you're assembling a family that becomes the core of what Veilguard is about, and it's about taking this group, this found family, and saving the world, side by side. That's how it ended. Now we move on to the video. The video starts off with the devs, all three of them that we just recently mentioned, and that they talk about how Veilguard is their favorite game so far, and how Bush thinks all the games has heart and soul put into it, but this one is something different and something more. The video continues with the introduction of the devs and what they do for the game. A lot of stuff mentioned in this video is actually from the article, so I won't be rehashing that, but I will be putting all of these in the description, so if you guys want to read them or watch the video, you can. Most of the stuff is rehashed, so I'm just going to go on to the next stuff that's more interesting and that wasn't in the actual articles, and let's get into it. Dar talks about how all of these story-driven games being released in 2023, like Baldur's Gate 3, Starfield, and Tears of the Kingdom, and showing that these are all story-driven RPGs, and all of them are different from each other, but you can like all of them or some of them, and that shows how big the genre is, and how it is bigger. And he also mentions that people who may have picked up an RPG from last year and looking for something new might find something that they love in Veilguard. Bush talks about loving Solus and admits that this game is not about him. They also mention the stuff about how they changed the name from Dreadwolf because it focused on an individual while this game focuses on a group. We mentioned that in the last video, so I'm not gonna rehash this a million times on this channel, but we're gonna move on. Epler mentions that the beginning of Veilguard is to feel like the final chapter of an earlier story, aka Trespasser, I'm guessing. So they also mentioned the spoilers of how they were stopping Solus with the ritual. Dara mentions that he said in the last article that BioWare shows their strengths in this game of telling stories through characters, and that putting that foremost. He also mentions Dragon Age Origins and how in this game, Veilguard, the story is told through the characters that's going somewhere, and while in Dragon Age Origins, a lot of the things were done just to do them, while Veilguard leads to a goal instead, to storytelling and the future of the series. Blair mentions how everything you do in Veilguard is supposed to feel like you're being led towards the goal of stopping the elven gods and the world from falling apart. He also mentions building the world and how it will look after the elven gods are free and corrupting it, and how it looked before. And he used the Arlington Forest as an example. It's mentioned how this game is hub-based and how you travel through the crossroads with the Alluvians. He also mentioned that certain areas are heavily mission-based and story-based. So I hope that doesn't mean that they're small, but we'll see. They also mentioned that exploring larger areas can lead you to Apex battles, which are mostly frenzied, I'm guessing, enemies and like stronger enemies. I'm gonna guess those are like boss battles. They also mentioned that they wanted to make sure Tsunku looked as if it was ruled by mages, and that to show magic, what kind of magic was going on and stuff like that. And they also mentioned that in this engine, instead of using the Eclipse engine from the other games, this one you can actually see the magic going on even in battle and stuff like that when they were showing it on the screen. The devs talk about using the create a character again, and how they were using them, that you can meet people in like shops and stuff like that, and all of them were created in the create a character, so you can remake those characters, except people like, you know, your companions, because they're not made in the create a character. I keep saying create a character when I mean character creator. I don't know why I do that. He also mentioned going to a place called Treviso, which is in Antiva, so that's very interesting. They also mentioned loot gear and enchantment. I just wanted to mention that, but it's interesting that they mentioned it, so I wonder if Sandal is actually coming back. They also mentioned the combat and how you should be able to feel every hit with each attack, which I love to hear. They mentioned at the ending of this video how excited they are about people getting this game and getting their hands on it, and I'm also excited to see how it goes. But I just wanted to just say a little bit of this before I end the video, because this was the ending and most of the stuff that they mentioned in this was in the beginning of the video. So I just wanted to mention that some of the stuff that they said in this rubbed me the wrong way. I'm not gonna lie, like some of the stuff making it seem like they didn't intentionally or purposely make the other companions of the other games, but they just only rubbed me the wrong way. I'm just gonna say that. And I just feel like they really focus on the companions, and like I said in the other video about Dragon Age Origins, how it seems like their factions are going to be like the other factions in Dragon Age Origins where you had to get all of them using the treaties. I feel like they're trying to do that again, but this is the thing, I just don't want them to focus so much on the companions that they don't focus on Rook, and that's my biggest issue, because unlike other games like Baldur's Gate 3 and Dragon Age Origins where you had the choice to choose whatever choice you wanted, in this game you have a voice protagonist where, so most of the choices, if you choose them, someone else is going to choose those choices, so you don't really roleplay as much as these other games. So that's why I'm like, if you're gonna focus on the companions, I really hope that you're gonna focus also on Rook, because one of my issues with the Inquisitor is that the Inquisitor didn't have as much personality as Hawk did, even though Hawk was in a game that felt like it was more rushed. I don't remember the actual timeline of that game being made, Dragon Age 2, but I still played through my Hawk as either diplomatic or just being snarky and funny, and that one, I'm literally replaying it again, and I'm like, Funny Hawk is just so weird and just so fun to play with. Well, as when I played through my Inquisitor, your Inquisitor never really gets a personality. No matter how many choices you choose, your character doesn't say anything different as a reaction. So you could say something to Varric, and then your character will react differently depending on which one you choose, most of the choices you choose. And it was really interesting, but you don't do that. So I'm really hoping they do something like that in this game. So hopefully they do that soon, and I hope that we get more about Rook soon, because I just feel like they're focusing way too much on the companions. But that's about it for this video. If you have any opinions on all of the stuff that was mentioned in this video, leave it down below and I'll be interested to see it. They're also talking about stuff that's coming out for Comic-Con, and that's going to be happening from the 25th to the 28th, I'm pretty sure. And they're also talking about the panel, announcing the voice actors and stuff like that. And it seemed like they were going to say something about gameplay, but people found out that it wasn't true. So this is just going to be mostly a panel that's going to be talking about the companions. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I'm sorry about the videos coming out late. I was supposed to upload this video on Friday, but I was really bad this entire week. I was busy on Monday. I felt bad on Tuesday. I had like a 24-hour bug that gave me a sore throat on Wednesday. Thursday, I just felt I had a terrible headache and my audio got corrupted that I recorded. And then today I just felt better. So here's your video. So thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I hope that I can make more content, and I hope you guys don't mind me being very late on this video. I just wanted to do as my best, so I wanted to make sure I got as much news as possible as I guess a sorry. So here's your video, and thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you for the support for all of my recent videos. Appreciate your support. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I can't wait to see what's next for Dragon Age, and I'll see you guys in the next video. See ya. Bye.
Whoa, I'm just a man missing you. Please understand, without you, I'm dying.